Bosnia's deepening ethnic divisions out in the open. A hardliner who wants to break away has been chosen by the Serbs as their president. The top post is also held by Muslims and Croats. Will Milorad Dodik's election pull the country apart 2 decades after the brutal civil war ended? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Hoda Hamid. The results of Sunday's general election in Bosnia and Herzegovina are threatening to cause further instability in the Balkans, which was wrecked by civil war in the 1990s. Serb voters elected Milorad Dodik as their candidate for one of the nation's 3 presidents. He wants to split the country. That's likely to heighten tensions with Bosniak Muslims and the Croats who want to stay united. We'll get to our guests in a moment, but first, David Chater reports from Sarajevo.
Milorad Dodik will now join the rotating presidency of a country he has vowed to split in half. The 58-year-old Serbian nationalist says he wants a referendum that will give the people of Republika Srpska the chance to break away from their Bosnian and Croatian neighbors and achieve independence.
The number one priority for my job in the future will be the position of the Serb people and Republika Srpska. I want to establish good communication. I believe that Bosnia-Herzegovina perhaps can make some progress if everyone is respected and if other people reject the meddling of foreigners in the policies of Bosnia-Herzegovina.
In the campaign, he urged his supporters to celebrate the heritage of Radovan Karadzic, the man who provoked the start of the war here in the early 90s, now a convicted war criminal serving a 40-year prison term for genocide.
In an echo of President Trump putting America first, Dodik said that his mission was to put Republika Srpska first. He says that the nation of Bosnia-Herzegovina is in fact an arranged marriage, and it hasn't worked. He wants a divorce.
The Electoral Commission declared the polling as free and fair, but monitors declared it as chaotic with a record number of irregularities. The main concerns of the voters, a youth unemployment rate of 40% and widespread corruption, received little attention.
Maybe it will change only that more people and more young people will leave Bosnia and Herzegovina, not because of the lack of patriotism to this country, but because of lack of perspective and losing the hope for the future that is vanishing and fading here in Bosnia and Herzegovina for all of us.
In Republika Srpska, though, they are celebrating a new future and a dream of independence getting closer. A future that doesn't lie in the European Union or NATO membership, but with Serbia and Russia. David Chater, Al Jazeera, Sarajevo.
Okay, so let's bring in our guests from our studio in Sarajevo, Filip Begović, editor-in-chief of Stav magazine. From Banja Luka, Zoran Pavlovic, a political analyst. And also in Sarajevo, Adnan Huskic from the Center for Election Studies, an independent think tank. A warm welcome to you all. Zoran Pavlovic, let me start with you. So a day after the election, Milorad Dodik is saying he will never step foot in Sarajevo and that he will conduct business by video conference. That sort of sets the tone, right?
Well, there are certain statements which are obviously said in the first day after the elections. And the fact is that many of these words are usually used to support his position after the campaign. So there are the certain rules and the laws and constitution in Bosnia and Herzegovina which he had to obey. Mr. Dodik is a specific person who actually tried to promote himself and looking of the ways how he can confuse international community with the certain statements, and that's very often wrongly understood from the international community. When I said that, I mean that there are the certain rules and laws and bylaws which he had to obey, and obviously the position in a presidency will not fit to his character where he actually always wanted to dominate and to rule the things around him.
And so, Filip Begović, you are in Sarajevo. How are these words likely to be received by the people there and also elsewhere around Bosnia?
I didn't hear you very well, but if we talk about Milorad Dodik, he's not the only problem. We have here also the problem with Dragan Čović. He was the candidate of Croats for the presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and he wasn't elected. Željko Komšić, the other Croat, was elected, but he was elected by Bosniak votes. And now we will have some kind of crisis. We know that Dragan Čović and Milorad Dodik are companions. They have some kind of direct communications with Zagreb and Belgrade, and also they have some kind of communication with Moscow. Probably we will have some kind of crisis. If we think 6 months till 1 year, probably that will be a big problem. The problem always after the elections in Bosnia and Herzegovina is how to make a government. You know, we need stable coalitions. Very good is that the biggest and the strongest party of Bosniaks, this is not Muslim party, this is the central right-wing party of Bosniak people. Muslims are voting for this party. That they have the same positions like last elections, and that's very good for Muslims in Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Okay, well, Adnan, Huskic, how should we read the results of these elections? Is it part of this national wave that has been sweeping throughout Europe lately, or is it something very specific to the Balkans?
Well, I don't think it's a part of the general wave that we're seeing and witnessing in Europe right now, all throughout the world. We've been having this situation for now more than 20 years. And if you look at the first elections after the war in 1996, which only reaffirmed the dominance of the ethno-national parties, which was completely understandable. Over time, these parties entrenched themselves through the very existence of systemic preconditions which allow only for these parties to flourish and basically discourage working across the aisle or trying to reach out across the inter-ethnic boundary here. In a way, given the fact that the Bosnia has over time become a captured state proper, given the fact that we still have an expansive government and that the public resources are vast, these parties are now more or less systemic parties whose election success is somehow ensured by the very fact that they are controlling what they are controlling right now. So hardly a surprise, these elections compared to the previous ones, especially since the rules of the game haven't changed. What perhaps has changed when we compare it to the first elections after the war is that the goals, the proclaimed goals of all these parties, sometimes called ethno-national, sometimes ethno-religious, have meanwhile become less relevant. This is, as far as the political dynamics is concerned, is only an attempt to subvert and control the public resources, and in the process certain frictions always appear, which are then which manifest themselves always as an inter-ethnic struggle. Underneath all that is actually the simply control for the resources, which has been happening now for quite some time.
Well, certainly Bosnia has one of the most complicated systems of governance in the world. So let's just give a little explanation to our viewers. The country comprises of regional states, the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina and the Republika Srpska. There are 3 directly elected presidents. They're in charge of foreign, diplomatic and military affairs, as well as state budgets. The 3 presidents are from each of the constituent ethnic groups, Bosniak, Serb and Croat. They rotate the presidency's 4-year term and serve each 8 months each. Parliament has a House of Representatives and a House of Peoples. Members of the House of Representatives are directly elected, while those for the House of Peoples are indirectly elected by 2 regional assemblies. The chairman of the Council of Ministers, effectively the Prime Minister, is nominated by the President. The 2-region Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina and the Republika Srpska have significant autonomy and each elect a president. A prime minister with a council of 16 ministers runs the 2 regional governments. Certainly from the outside, it is very difficult to understand this maze of assemblies and governance that's in Bosnia. But that is one of the legacies of the Dayton Agreement. Now, Zoran, this question is for you. A U.S. official said that the Dayton Agreement was perfect to stop the war, but it was lousy to build a state. However, others would argue that if for example, Mr. Dodik became so successful, it's also because everybody lacks that system that is this Dayton Agreement, because it helps each group further its own interests.
The fact is that the Dayton Agreement brought the peace to the country, and that was the solution, the best possible solution at that moment. The problem is that the democratic rules and democracy as a system of living in Bosnia was totally unknown territory. And the fact is that the people follow up the leaders based on the national attitude and very often mixed with the faith. The complaint from the international community and from the independent free-thinking people were that this concept should be improved. And unfortunately, international community did not follow that path properly. So somehow, based on internal conflicts between the national leaders, which are very often virtual one, so does not exist among the common people in life, on the street, let's say like that, gave that people, that leaders, opportunity to continue with the governing of their own people. The fact is actually that they are not able to offer any measures or activities which can lead this country to the better future, and then to offer the new jobs and the new investments. So actually, they are misusing the heritage of the pre-war and war situation in order to maintain their domination among their own people. So some of them, like Mr. Dodik and Mr. Begović as well, are very efficient in that approach, in that concept, which they put in public as themselves as defender of the national interest and the people. So that's totally wrong, because in modern economy, in modern democracy, you have to offer people to live better. Unfortunately, that's not the case in Bosnia. And unfortunately, these elections show that the previous 10, 12 years policy, which they developed very efficiently, pass on this election as well. So no new people, just a few points here and there, and some elected or just nominated politicians gain some votes, but unfortunately for the general election, picture has not been changed, only in the case of a representative of Croat people. But that's another part of the story. In this moment, we can say that the national concept is actually misused to gain the votes for elections, which has been performed the day before.
Well, Filip, Begović, would you agree with that this idea of pushing forward a nationalist agenda is something that's happening on all sides?
No, I wouldn't agree with that. Totally, I wouldn't agree with that, because we have a problem by understanding what is national politic. You know, national politic that is representing Serbs, Croats and Bosniak is not a problem. Problem is when national politics is aggressive, when the national politics is not prepared for dialogue. We have the problem with Serbian and Croatian national politics. For example, my companion said that Bosniak politics and Muslim politics here is victimizing something. How dare you say something like that? Because we have a problem, really. Our mothers are still trying to find the bones of their sons. We had genocide, and Serbs didn't make any catharsis here in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And you can't say that we are victimizing anything. We're just talking about facts that are ruled in Hague. And our fear, Bosniak fear, our only fear is that we will have dissolution of Bosnia and Herzegovina. You have this example with Željko Komšić that is elected by Bosniak Croatian member of presidency that is elected with Bosniak votes. Why did this happen? Because Bosniaks are in fear, in big fear, that Bosnia and Herzegovina will be dissoluted. So, what was the biggest mistake of Dragan Čović, who was the candidate, was that he made 4 years, he made very aggressive rhetorics through Bosniaks, through Bakir Izetbegović. He was accusing us all the time that we want Islamic State, that we are radicals, that we want that that. The president of Croatia, Kolinda Grabar-Kitarović, said that we have 10,000 extremists and mujahedins on the border of Croatia and Bosnia and Herzegovina. This is totally lie. This is unbelievable that somebody can say such things, you know. And because of that fear, because the rhetorics is like in 90s during the war, the same rhetorics, Bosniaks are in big fear. And this fear made that they vote for Željko Komšić, who is patriot. He is not a good politician, but he is patriot. And the second the candidate was elected was Šefik Džaferović, and he is very experienced lawyer. And we can say that these two members of presidency will preserve Bosnia and Herzegovina in next period, because Milorad Dodik is very, very aggressive, and we don't know what he will do. He will do probably some kind of very bad things in the future.
Well,
he is on the blacklist of America. We have president that is on blacklist of America. You know, that's Milorad Dodik.
Well, Adnan, you know, when the Dayton Agreement came, I think the idea behind it was also to have these three groups working together and maybe somehow with the carrot of joining the EU, joining NATO, have these divisions dissipate. Filip here is now saying nothing has changed since the days of the war back in the 1990s. So what went wrong?
Well, I guess, I mean, if we look chronologically, several things actually went wrong. First of all, the whole idea was actually based on the power sharing setup, which is, you know, pretty much a dogmatic approach when it comes to post-conflict societies as of recently. So basically you are trying to accommodate different groups and their political demands within a single whole. And then in the process, basically we have introduced something which some theorists have called the power sharing plus or consociation plus. So it was supposed to work. Unfortunately, there was an international factor involved in Bosnia which was not happy with the progress made at the very early beginnings, starting with the first election in 1996. So gradually, over time, what happened is that the international engagement became very active, heavy-handed. We had the successive introductions of executive powers vested in the High Representative of the international community, most of which were used then to impose laws, those over which the domestic political elites couldn't agree, even to sack people who were obstructing the implementation of the Dayton Agreement. So in the process, the international community actually became the fourth player in the game. But what came as a result in 2006, after the international community's sudden withdrawal from Bosnia and the Americans shifting their focus away from the Balkans to the Middle East, is the situation where the Europeans have naively, I have to say, assumed that now the political elites in Bosnia are prepared to take the ownership of the processes in the country. So this ownership transfer was the name of the game. But what happened in the process is an entirely different thing. What was obviously completely misunderstood is that over time, and with the international community that stepped in or jumped in every time when there was no way to make consensus over important or strategic decisions, thereby basically making them themselves. What they have done is that they have discouraged political elites from engaging in a constructive dialogue at first, from trying to build a broader consensus over the most important issues. So the situation we're seeing right now is something that has started already in 2006. The balance was upset with the sudden withdrawal of the international. So what we got now is the situation where the political elites are very distant from one another. And I would say, especially when we look at the proclaimed goals of these ethnic elites, you will see that they are diametrically opposed, which means that there is a lot of centrifugal forces as far as the elite cooperation is concerned, or the absence thereof. And so we are basically, in this sense, actually at the very beginning of the process of trying to really come up, and this is also something that is frequently cited by Dodik himself, where he wants to, or he insists upon actually coming up with raison d'etat, coming up with a reason for the state to see whether we can come up with a basic agreement. The situation we're having right now is the situation where the rule of law is definitely not entrenched in Bosnia. The respect for law is not entrenched in Bosnia. Even the decisions of the Constitutional Court, which means the decisions which pertain to our basic document, the basic law, are not respected or implemented.
Well, Zoran, I mean, talking about striking a balance, you know, some people fear that Mr. Dodik will use his election to the presidency to really strengthen and put forward only the agenda of the Republika Srpska. Certainly his comments today that we mentioned earlier did not help to push away those fears. Furthermore, that he also said that he would ask President Trump to remove the American High Representative. That really probably makes people wonder further how much he wants to take the Republika Srpska into the sphere of Russia.
Well, first I have to say that I almost fully agree with Adnan and his statement. When we talk about the action of Mr. Dodik, you have to understand that he is very efficient in playing a game with the international community, from one side. From other side, the position where he is elected last night, it's not quite comfort for him, because it's not a ruling position, it's just a member of the presidency, which are limited in their authorities and the topics which they are going to interfere. Within that, he started with some new ideas how to discuss or how to promote his position into the much stronger ruling members of the presidency. Either it's not by the constitution possible to perform, let's say like that. So he is playing the game with Russia, with this kind of political propaganda related to President Putin and the Minister Lavrov. And actually he is doing that because of the local people, or for the local elections. Republika Srpska actually is not so important in a world relations, especially between Russia and states. And the possibility to interfere in these big games, it's very likely not going to be possible.
Well, certainly it has to be said that Bosniaks and Croats are very worried. They would like to see their country stay united. Unfortunately, Filip, I can see that you wanted to say something, but we have reached the end of this program. So thank you to all our guests, Filip, Mursel, Begović, Zoran Pavlovic, and Adnan Huskic. And thank you too for watching. You can see the program anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Hoda Abdel Hamid, and the whole team here in Doha, bye for now.